The rain hammered against the windows of our small apartment in Manchester, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Alaric, a 43-year-old software developer, had always considered myself a logical man, a man of systems and order. But the chaos that had erupted in my life defied any logical explanation. It had started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Elara, my wife of 15 years, a vibrant and beautiful art teacher, had begun to change. The late nights at school, the hushed phone calls, the password-protected phone, all these had started to erode the foundation of trust we had built over years. I tried to brush it off, attributing it to the pressures of her job, the stress of modern life. But a nagging feeling persisted, a knot of anxiety that tightened with each passing day. It wasn't that our marriage was perfect. We had our share of disagreements, our moments of distance. But we had always been able to talk, to communicate, to work through our problems. Now, however, a wall had risen between us, a barrier of secrets and unspoken words. Elara seemed distant, preoccupied, her eyes often glazed over as if she were lost in another world. I tried to reach out to ask her what was wrong, but she would always deflect, offering vague excuses or simply dismissing my concerns as paranoia. "You're imagining things, Alaric," she would say, her voice laced with a hint of irritation. "I'm just tired, that's all." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The more she denied it, the more suspicious I became. I started paying closer attention to her movements, scrutinizing her phone calls, her text messages, her social media activity. I felt like a detective in a bad movie, a role I never imagined I would play in my own life. One evening, Elara told me she had to stay late at school for a meeting. I offered to pick her up, but she refused, saying that she would be home late and that I shouldn't wait up. As soon as she left, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I knew I had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I waited an hour, then drove to her school. The parking lot was deserted, the building dark and silent. I parked my car down the street and walked towards the school, peering through the windows, trying to catch a glimpse of her. After about 15 minutes, I saw a light in one of the classrooms. I crept closer, my heart pounding in my chest. I peered through the window, and what I saw shattered my world into a million pieces. Elara was in the classroom, but she wasn't alone. She was with a man, a younger man, a colleague of hers named Lysander. They were embracing, kissing passionately, their bodies entwined. I stood there frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. The scene unfolded before me like a nightmare, a grotesque parody of the love and commitment I thought we shared. I watched as they continued to embrace, their movements becoming more intimate, more explicit. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, a searing pain that ripped through my chest. I wanted to scream, to shout, to tear them apart, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed by shock, by disbelief, by the sheer horror of what I was witnessing. Finally, I managed to pull myself away from the window. I stumbled back to my car, my legs feeling like lead. I sat there for a long time, staring blankly ahead, trying to process what I had just seen. It was like a punch to the gut, a betrayal so profound that it left me gasping for air. I couldn't understand it. Why would she do this? What had I done to deserve this? I had always been a good husband, a loving partner. I had supported her dreams, her ambitions. I had always been there for her through thick and thin. How could she betray me like this? As I drove home, my mind raced with questions, with doubts, with a searing anger that threatened to consume me. I knew that my life would never be the same. The trust was broken, the bond severed. The woman I had loved, the woman I had shared my life with, had become a stranger, a betrayer, an enemy. When Elara finally came home, she acted as if nothing had happened. She greeted me with a kiss, asked me about my day, and started preparing dinner. I watched her, my heart filled with a mixture of rage and despair. How could she be so normal, so nonchalant after what she had done? I wanted to confront her, to scream at her, to demand an explanation. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was afraid of what she would say, afraid of the truth that would inevitably come out. So I played along, pretending that everything was fine, while inside I was crumbling, falling apart. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions of my life, going to work, eating meals, sleeping in the same bed as Elara, but I felt like a ghost. a shadow of my former self. I couldn't look her in the eye, couldn't touch her, couldn't even speak to her without feeling a surge of anger and disgust. I knew that I couldn't continue living like this, that I had to confront her, to demand answers, to make a decision about our future. But I was afraid. Afraid of losing her, afraid of being alone, afraid of the unknown. One evening after we had finished dinner, I finally mustered the courage to speak. "Elara," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "we need to talk." She looked at me, her eyes wary as if she sensed what was coming. "What is it, Alaric?" she asked, her voice flat. "I know about Lysander," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her face paled, her eyes widening in shock. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice shaking. "I saw you, Elara," I said, my voice growing stronger. "I saw you at the school. I saw you with him." She remained silent for a moment, her face a mask of fear and guilt. Then she began to cry. "Alaric, I'm so sorry," she sobbed, her voice choked with emotion. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "A mistake," I said, my voice rising in anger. "You call it a mistake? You were kissing him, touching him, betraying me. How can you call that a mistake?" "I don't know why I did it," she said, her voice pleading. "I was confused, unhappy. I felt like we were drifting apart." "Drifting apart," I said, my voice filled with disbelief. "Is that why you cheated on me, because we were drifting apart?" "No, it's not like that," she said, her voice desperate. "I still love you, Alaric. I don't want to lose you." I stared at her, my heart filled with a mixture of pain and anger. "How can you say that you love me after what you've done?" I said, my voice trembling. "How can I ever trust you again?" She didn't answer. She just sat there crying, her face buried in her hands. I knew then that it was over. The trust was gone, the love shattered. There was no going back. "I want you to leave," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I want you out of my life." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with shock and disbelief. "Alaric, please," she begged. "Don't do this. We can work through this. We can go to counseling." "It's too late, Elara," I said, my voice unwavering. "I can't forgive you. I can't forget what you've done. I want you to leave, and I want you to leave now." She didn't argue. She just nodded, her face pale and drawn. She stood up, walked to the bedroom, and started packing her things. I watched her, my heart aching with sadness and regret. I had loved her so much, had given her everything. And she had thrown it all away for a moment of fleeting pleasure, for a cheap thrill. As she walked out the door, she turned to me one last time, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Alaric," she said. "I'll always regret this." I didn't say anything. I just watched her go, my heart breaking into a million pieces. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. I felt like I was living in a void, a black hole of despair and loneliness. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't even think straight. I spent hours staring at the walls, replaying the scene I had witnessed at the school, torturing myself with images of Elara and Lysander together. I tried to find solace in my work, but I couldn't concentrate. My mind was too preoccupied with pain and anger. I reached out to friends and family, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. I was too ashamed, too humiliated. I didn't want them to know that I had been betrayed, that I had been made a fool of. One evening, as I was sitting alone in my apartment, drowning in self-pity, I received a phone call. It was from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered it. "Hello," I said, my voice weak. "Alaric," a voice said on the other end. It was a woman's voice, a voice I didn't recognize. "Yes, this is Alaric," I said, my voice still trembling. "My name is Isolde," the voice said. "I'm Lysander's wife." My heart skipped a beat. I knew then that my life was about to change again. "I know about Elara," Isolde said, her voice cold and hard. "I know about the affair." I remained silent, my mind reeling. "I've been watching them for weeks," she said. "I've seen them together, I've heard their conversations, I have proof." I felt a surge of anger and resentment. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice filled with bitterness. "Because I want to help you," she said. "I want to make them pay for what they've done." I was skeptical. "Why would you want to help me?" I asked. "What's in it for you?" "Revenge," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "I want to destroy them, to ruin their lives, and I think we can do it together." I hesitated for a moment, considering her offer. I had never been a vengeful person, but the pain and anger I felt were overwhelming. The thought of making Elara and Lysander suffer, of making them pay for what they had done, was incredibly appealing. "What do you have in mind?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. And so, an unlikely alliance was formed, born out of betrayal and fueled by revenge. Isolde and I met the next day at a small cafe in the city center. She was a striking woman, with fiery red hair and piercing green eyes. She looked like someone who wouldn't take any nonsense, someone who was capable of anything. She laid out her plan, a meticulously crafted scheme to expose Elara and Lysander's affair and ruin their reputations. It was ruthless, it was cunning, and it was exactly what I wanted to do. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Alaric?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "This is going to be messy, it's going to be painful, and it's going to change your life forever." "I'm ready," I said, my voice firm. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes." The first step in Isolde's plan was to gather evidence. She had already collected a significant amount of information, including photos, text messages, and emails. But she needed more, something concrete that would prove the affair beyond any doubt. She suggested that we hire a private investigator to follow Elara and Lysander, to document their movements and interactions. I agreed, and we hired a reputable investigator who specialized in infidelity cases. Within a week, the investigator had gathered a mountain of evidence, including video footage of Elara and Lysander entering a hotel together, holding hands in public, and exchanging intimate gestures. The evidence was damning, irrefutable. Isolde then devised a plan to expose the affair to Elara and Lysander's colleagues and friends. She created a fake email account and sent anonymous emails to everyone they knew, attaching the photos and videos as proof of their infidelity. The emails were sent late at night, ensuring that they would be read first thing in the morning. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Elara and Lysander were ostracized by their colleagues, shunned by their friends, and ridiculed by their acquaintances. Their reputations were in tatters, their careers in jeopardy. But Isolde wasn't finished yet. She wanted to inflict even more pain, to make them suffer even more humiliation. She discovered that Elara was up for a prestigious award, a recognition of her outstanding contribution to the arts. Isolde contacted the award committee and presented them with the evidence of Elara's affair, arguing that she was no longer a suitable candidate for the award. The committee was shocked and appalled. They immediately withdrew Elara's nomination, further damaging her reputation and career prospects. Lysander, too, faced the consequences of his actions. His wife, Isolde, filed for divorce, citing his adultery as the reason. She also demanded full custody of their children and a significant portion of his assets. Lysander's life crumbled around him, his career in ruins, his family torn apart, his reputation destroyed. He tried to apologize to Isolde, to beg her for forgiveness, but she refused to listen. She was determined to make him pay for his betrayal, and she succeeded. As I watched Elara and Lysander's lives fall apart, I felt a sense of satisfaction, a sense of justice. They had betrayed me, they had hurt me, and they were now paying the price for their actions. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to realize that revenge wasn't as sweet as I had imagined. The pain and anger that had consumed me for so long began to subside, replaced by a sense of emptiness, a sense of regret. I had destroyed Elara and Lysander's lives, but I had also destroyed a part of myself. I had become consumed by hate, by vengeance, and I had lost sight of who I was. One evening, Isolde called me. "It's over, Alaric," she said. "We've done it. We've ruined them." "Yes," I said, my voice flat, "we have." "Are you happy?" she asked. I hesitated for a moment, then said, "No, Isolde, I'm not happy. I'm just tired." "I understand," she said. "Revenge is never as satisfying as you think it will be." We talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. I never saw her again. The following months were a period of healing and self-reflection. I realized that I couldn't continue living in the past, that I had to move on with my life. I started seeing a therapist who helped me process my emotions and deal with the trauma of the betrayal. I also started focusing on my work, throwing myself into my projects and rediscovering my passion for software development. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my life, to find happiness and meaning again. I eventually sold my apartment in Manchester and moved to a small coastal town in Cornwall. I wanted a fresh start, a chance to escape the memories of my past. I bought a small cottage overlooking the sea and started working as a freelance software developer. I enjoyed the peace and quiet of the countryside, the beauty of the natural surroundings. I spent my days coding, hiking, and exploring the coastline. I also started painting again, a hobby I had abandoned years ago. It was therapeutic, a way to express my emotions and find solace in creativity. One day, as I was walking along the beach, I met a woman named Bronte. She was a local artist, a kind and gentle soul who shared my love of nature and art. We started talking and we quickly discovered that we had a lot in common. We began spending time together, exploring the countryside, visiting art galleries, and sharing our stories. Slowly but surely, I began to fall in love again. Bronte was everything that Elara wasn't: honest, loyal, and compassionate. She understood my pain, my fears, and my insecurities. She helped me to heal, to trust again, to believe in love again. After a year of dating, I asked Bronte to marry me. She said yes, and we were married in a small ceremony on the beach, surrounded by our closest friends and family. It was the happiest day of my life. I had finally found peace, happiness, and love again. The betrayal of my past was still a part of me, a scar that would never fully heal. But it no longer defined me. I had learned from my mistakes, had grown stronger from my experiences, and had found a new beginning. I had survived the storm, and I had emerged stronger and wiser on the other side. Elara's betrayal had been the most painful experience of my life, but it had also been a catalyst for change, a wake-up call that had forced me to reevaluate my life and find true happiness. In the end, I was grateful for the experience, for it had led me to Bronte, to a new life, and to a love that was stronger and more enduring than anything I had ever known. Years later, I received a letter from Elara. She wrote that she was divorced from Lysander and was living a lonely and unhappy life. She apologized for her betrayal and asked for my forgiveness. I didn't respond. I had moved on, had found happiness, and had no desire to revisit the past. I had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for my own. I had released the anger and resentment that had consumed me for so long, and I had finally found peace. My life with Bronte was everything I had ever wanted: a loving partnership, a supportive community, and a sense of purpose. I was content, I was happy, and I was grateful for every moment. The rain still fell on occasion, but it no longer mirrored the storm within me. The sun had come out and it was shining brightly on my new life. And so, my journey began with heartbreak, betrayal, and revenge, but it ended with healing, forgiveness, and love. It was a long and difficult road, but it was a road that led me to a better place, to a better version of myself. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Summary: Alaric, a software developer, discovers his wife Elara's affair with her colleague Lysander. Devastated, he teams up with Lysander's wife, Isolde, to exact revenge, exposing the affair and ruining both their lives. However, the act of vengeance leaves Alaric feeling empty. He moves to Cornwall, finds healing through therapy and art, and eventually finds love again with Bronte. Years later, Elara seeks forgiveness, but Alaric, having moved on, finds peace in his new life. Remember, heartbreak can be a catalyst for change, leading to unexpected paths of healing and love. Don't let betrayal define you. Let it guide you to a stronger, happier future. Never lose hope.